Hello, I'm back again. So, I wanted to go over a few foods that are especially protective against heart disease, per Dr. Geiger's research reviews. Now, you might notice, as mentioned in the previous talk, that there's a little bit of a difference between the studies on foods that have been shown to help prevent heart disease and the research that has been done to date on the diet pattern to reverse it once it's already shown to have been present. And so please don't get too hung up if there's a few small discrepancies between this list and what you find when you're looking through Dr. Esselson's or Ornish's research. As Dr. Esselson said, for his version, he wants the arteries to sparkle, and so he doesn't even want a single drop of oil or other fatty foods to go into the body. That being said, let's begin some of the list of foods that are helpful for prevention of heart disease. So, first on my lap is the beans, of which there are many varieties. Here we have a bag of mixed beans, so a little show and tell for you tonight. Any kind of bean is very, very good for the heart. Beans are very rich in fiber and other macronutrients, and of the places around the world that have been studied for things that they're doing correctly so that they're living healthfully into their 90s. For more information on that, please check out the Blue Zone solution by Dan Buettner or something like that. Again, I'll have the link in the comment section a little bit later. There's research that shows that the more beans people eat, the longer the lifespan and the healthier they tend to be. So any kind of beans, including the infamous soy products. There is actually some effort by some groups as a anti-soy, basically they have propaganda out there which is trying to turn people away from the ever-present and wonderful soy products. More on that later, as we probably will dedicate an entire presentation to that. There's a lot of myths out there regarding soy that's being actively propagated by certain groups with vested interest in doing so. Anyway, but for terms of heart health, soy is extremely good for you. Highly recommend 3 to 5 servings a day as the optimum amount of soy servings per day. All right, and similar to the beans and nuts is another category that people call legumes, and so this is some split peas, but dal and other various kind of bean family of foods would call into that category as well. So here's some other foods that are very protective against heart disease. Moving down the list, berries. These are extremely healthy for you. So this is just frozen berries. By the way, these are extremely easy to throw into your morning oatmeal or whatever else you're doing. Very easy to incorporate into smoothies and so forth. But the antioxidant potential of these and the fiber and all sorts of other goodness, these are not only very good for the heart, but also very good for preventing cancers and other things as well. More details, of course, on my favorite resources. Next, certain spices are particularly helpful as well. I was trying to find out before this video presentation if this is indeed the Ceylon cinnamon or the cassia cinnamon. So the Ceylon cinnamon has been shown to be helpful with reversing or preventing heart disease, I should say. The cassia cinnamon is a little bit more toxic, and the closest I can tell is I believe this particular brand of McCormick, I believe, is a Saigon cinnamon, which is more closely related to the cassia or a more toxic version, whereas the true Ceylon cinnamon is a little bit safer and also better for heart health as well. So please, when you're looking at your cinnamons, know that there is a difference between the cassia plant and the Ceylon cinnamon plant, and try to go for the Ceylon wherever possible as well. And that's another reason why there's recommended limits on how much cinnamon we have in the diet in general. Alrighty, so moving on from that, next product is dark chocolate and cocoa. So, for example, this is a little pure 100% cacao. Whenever possible, when choosing cocoa products, try to go for the natural unsweetened and the undutched version, because when they do some of that alkali processing, they actually are processing out some of the beneficial antioxidant properties to it. So it gives a different flavor, but you're also losing something in the process. So a very easy cocoa recipe using this might be, for example, heat up some water and get a blender and basically put about a half a cup of boiling water into your blender. Obviously, make sure you have a blender that can hold hot water. Take a heaping teaspoon of this loveliness into your 8 ounces of total fluid, and pour 4 ounces of soy milk, for example, like an unsweetened soy milk or something. So basically the boiling water and the cold soy milk even out the temperature, so it's actually a nice warm but not overcooked cocoa, and add a little bit of maple syrup to it, and voila, a beautiful cup of hot chocolate that is very healthy for you and low in calories as well. So anyway, that's just one serving suggestion. Obviously you can do lots of different things. Sometimes people will throw this into their smoothies, for example, as well, because the sweetness of things such as those berries counteract the bitterness of the cocoa powder. There are some certain types of dark chocolate. I don't have it available for demonstration because I didn't happen to buy any recently, but Dr. Ornish talks about having 1 square of a high quality vegan chocolate daily, and so a little dose of antioxidants helps with the mood, and it also helps keep those arteries open. So for Dr. Ornish, at least a square of dark chocolate a day is very healthy. Do not confuse that with milk chocolate. Basically, some of the dairy and the sugars and other things that are added to these things counteract the beneficial properties. So it's very popular for people to proclaim that chocolate is healthy and then chow down on very unhealthy versions of these things. So if you're going to go for it, go as pure as you can, using actual fruits, sweeteners, and soy if you need something dairy-like to mellow the taste out as well. Next on the list is coffee. Again, this is something you might notice is a distinct variation from Dr. Esselson's approach. The studies with coffee, some studies have shown that it was raising the cholesterol levels, but if you simply use a paper filter with the coffee, basically you're getting a lot of antioxidants or anti-inflammatory compounds in it without the things that were raising the cholesterol. And even Dr. Esselson allows for decaffeinated coffee as well. So again, some variations, but if you're looking for heart disease prevention, coffee's on the list. Again, do not weigh it down with a lot of creamers or sugar, because you're going to start to counteract the beneficial effects of that product. Next, dark chocolate, I mentioned apples. Specifically, dried apples. Sorry, I've actually got a real fresh apple on here. It is the fall, and so of course apple season. So apples are very, very good for you. The pectin, the fibers, basically help to sweep the body out from some of these cholesterols. Next, flax seeds. So for demonstration, golden flaxseed, any kind of flaxseed, doesn't really matter what color it is. The strongest, best benefit that you get from it is when the flaxseed is actually freshly ground. In some of my other presentations, you might notice I have a coffee grinder that sits right next to the dish of flax seeds, literally so that you can just take a scoop of flaxseed, put it in the grinder, which is only reserved for the flax and the chia seeds in this location, and hit the button on it, and you get instantly fresh ground flax seeds. You can use the pre-ground stuff, but the trouble with that is you don't know how long it's been sitting there, and some of the most healthy, awesome parts of the flaxseed, the omega-3s, the lignans, and other compounds are a little bit delicate. Like omega-3s, basically they go bad quickly, and so If they're locked into the shell, then they are better preserved, and if you release those things quickly with a little quick grind, you're going to get the best benefit. These are also wonderful on the oatmeal. They're very popular in things such as those green smoothies as well. So there's a lot of different ways in which this can be incorporated, at least a teaspoon or two a day. This is also very popular for helping to reduce the waist size. Sometimes people will make flaxseed plant-based vegan muffins or something, and even a cup or half a cup of flax seeds can be consumed in a day. If you eat them in their raw form, you see these wonderful little seeds in there. They're also very good for helping to relieve occasional constipation as well. So the ground version is a little bit more, goes through the body a little bit more easy without flushing everything out. And if you need a little help flushing things out, try some of this raw, and you'll see what the difference is. So anyway, good stuff there. Very healthy for a lot of other things, including breast cancer prevention, prostate cancer prevention as well. So even with that regard to the heart, that's an extremely healthy seed. I don't have any golden raisins, but I do have plain old raisins. These types of things, golden raisins and currants, have been studied for heart disease as well, so pretend that was a golden raisin. Next, greens, such as, for example, kale. Dr. Esselstyn is very fond of saying that people should have 6 servings of kale a day, and he's got this very cute little litany of all the different kinds of greens that are available, including arugula, and I think he was including asparagus and others in that list as well. We'll double check that later. I'll try to put a link on there as well. But arugula is one of the best in its class of being able to open up the blood vessels, basically through releasing nitric oxide, which, by the way, is how Viagra works. And so Dr. Greger has a beautiful presentation on 50 shades of greens and how it can be helpful in the bedroom as well. More on that later, or you can check out my erectile dysfunction video. All right, next. Indian gooseberries, otherwise known as amla. So this is something that you can find at certain Asian grocery stores or online on Amazon. Sometimes the health food stores will have some of this available as well. But this is a very easy thing to find. It's basically an Indian gooseberry, otherwise known as amla, and it's commonly sold in a powdered form. Next, spices. Turmeric, for example. This is very anti-inflammatory. I sing the praises of turmeric many places. Very good for fighting arthritis, very good for fighting cancers and other kinds of things as well. But basically, this type of thing helps to fight the inflammation of the arteries in coronary heart disease. So if you think about heart disease as being an inflammatory process, one of the ways in which these docs describe it is essentially very, very simplistic thinking, but if you imagine like a pimple or something being on the inside of the artery, it's just pus and all sorts of stuff that's just barely covered over by a protective cap that the body tries to stick over this pile of inflammation. And so this helps to fight that inflammation, as well as a lot of other health benefits to the turmeric, such as preventing dementias as well. A lot of good studies being done on turmeric, hot topic, so keep an eye on the news for that as well. And the teas. All teas are rich in those anti-inflammatory, antioxidant properties. The ones that are especially good for heart disease are the green tea and the hibiscus tea as well. There's a lot of varieties of hibiscus. I think Celestial Seasonings happens to be one of the more popular in the stores around here. Many flavors. They've got raspberry, they've got lemon, they've got cherry flavor if you get the mixed flavor box, and then there's the plain. And of course, it's one of those flowers that is a popular ornamental, and so you can actually grow your own. Very easy to make hibiscus tea. And a fun little science experiment if you happen to have some kids around or want to play with it yourself. You take a hibiscus flower, you take out that long stamen that is in the center. I can't really see it too well on this picture because these are kind of closed blossoms, but it's got a beautiful flower. It's got this long, powdery, pollen-filled white stamen, this part in the center where the pollen hangs out. So you cut that off unless you really want to get pollen all throughout your tea, which is kind of gritty and doesn't really go very well. And you put some boiling water on that thing, stir it around, and the color will leach out of the hibiscus flower and into the water, and it will usually turn it this beautiful red or purple color. You take a little bit of lemon juice and squirt that acid into the hibiscus tea, and magically it will go from being this beautiful violet color to a very light pink color with that change in the acidity. So it's kind of a fun little thing to play with, and you can sweeten it again with some of the sweeteners that are available. Do not recommend the artificial sweeteners, but rather something along the lines of maybe a little bit of honey, maybe a little bit of maple syrup. Dr. Greer talks about erythritol derived from grape sugar as being one of the best, as well as date sugar being one of the best because that's ground pulverized whole dates. So you get other health benefits from that as well. Anyway, but the basics that are actually recommended for heart disease prevention are green tea especially, and hibiscus tea. And by the way, green tea is also studied for a host of other health benefits. And the hibiscus tea, a strong cup of hibiscus tea, meaning I believe it was about 4 tea bags in the mix of basically the equivalent of using 4 tea bags in a cup of tea. That was shown to be as effective as one of the leading blood pressure medications at lowering blood pressure. So if you're struggling with controlling your blood pressure despite whole food plant-based living, adding some hibiscus might be the next level of control for the blood pressure. More on that, please, in my hypertension video. Just referencing back to all the other presentations I've done. Anyway, tomatoes are one of the other foods that are on the list. So here we have vine-ripe tomato as well. Tomato season is still upon us, so get your ripe tomatoes and indulge in these. Very, very healthy for the body. And then finally, some of the whole grains. So I mentioned already, this is whole wheat flour. A very common thing to be looking for when you're getting any kind of bread products. Look for the keyword of being whole in front of your type of flour. It's very popular for people to call it like a multi-grain or something. As long as it's multi-grain refined flour, you're going to actually get more inflammation and more damage to the arteries. Whereas when you get whole flour, whole wheat, whole rye, whole any kind of actual grain, and then you're going to get the benefit of the cholesterol lowering, the inflammation lowering properties to that. Along those lines, oats and oatmeal are also on the list of foods that are especially good for the heart. So Dr. Esselstyn says this is his favorite meal every morning. Basically, oats as minimally processed as you like. There are even oat groats that you can soak overnight and that sort of thing. There's a lot of different varieties of oatmeal, but basically oatmeal itself is very, very healthy. Just try to avoid the kind that you crack it open, you pour it into a bowl and you throw it in the microwave with a cup of water, because those varieties usually are very, very high in sugar, and so they may counteract the benefit of it as well. So again, for heart disease prevention, another spot where the experts, if you're looking into what Dr. Esselstyn and Ornish recommend versus what the newest research recommends, even such things as peanut butter for prevention of heart disease have been studied. And part of the theory is that they're rich in arginine and other components that open up those blood vessels, as well as other natural vitamins such as vitamin E in there. So, for example, with studies on dementia prevention, it was shown that people that have a diet that has a handful of nuts or other things such as the peanut butter actually had lower rates of dementia. And it was theorized that the vitamin E, which is an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory compound, would have something to do with it. So when they actually showed people eating foods that are rich in vitamin E, they found the protective benefit. But when people popped pills with vitamin E and C and stuff like that, basically certain supplements such as vitamin A, E, and beta carotene, if taken in the supplement form, actually raise the risk of heart disease. Kind of crazy. Eat your carrots, don't take a pill, because if you eat your carrot, your body will naturally figure out exactly what it needs. All that fiber, all that other stuff that comes prepackaged with it is what your body's digestive system is adapted for. Whereas when you take a pill version or a multivitamin version, basically you're taking this finely orchestrated machine and throwing a monkey wrench into it and just kind of messes it up. And hi Gravinder, yes, so almond butter, again, would be as good as the peanut butter. And when you're looking at these things, I do recommend looking at the labels, because a lot of the peanut butter brands that are out there are just filled with oils and sugars and all sorts of other things. So wherever possible, please try to get the ones that are ingredients are like simple, just peanuts, for example, in this particular brand. Another thing that you might want to watch out for, believe it or not, is organic peanut butter. This is a little tidbit I learned in medical school. There is a compound called, I think it was aflatoxin, basically, that is found in the mold on certain peanuts. And so when people were taking these slightly moldy peanuts and grinding them up and selling them, the aflatoxin was in higher concentration in the organic peanut butters. And so that is one of those little random trivia things for you. Just get the plain old peanut butter because that's held to a slightly different standard as far as the other things that might accidentally have ridden along for the ride. Alrighty, so things that increase the risk. Basically, there's a few other things that are very common in our society that raise the risk of heart disease. So the whole first half of this was all about prevention. Did not mention, by the way, an hour of exercise per day, and sleeping 7 hours a night are also things that are lifestyle types of things that are also good to help prevent heart disease. And as mentioned before, please, if you're using tobacco of any sort or nicotine-containing products of any sort, stay away from those as well. Vital, vital, vital. In fact, more vital than eating tomatoes, for example, or any of the other foods suggested. So things that raise the risk of heart disease, coconut milk and coconut oil. There's a big myth that coconut is extraordinarily healthy for you in the coconut oil version. It actually contains saturated fats, the same kind of fats that you find in your lard and your beefsteak and other kinds of animal products, and so I do recommend staying away from the coconut oils and the coconut milks as well. Dark fish, there's all sorts of toxins that are involved in fishes these days, especially things like mercury and all sorts of environmental toxins that they're unfortunately swimming through right now that they tend to soak up. The high-fat meals, including those prepared with olive oil. Yes, there is a beautiful presentation on Dr. Greger's website, nutritionfacts.org, that shows exactly how even our favorite olive oil stiffens the arteries within hours after a meal. And yes, Gravinder, PCBs, there's all sorts of other contaminants in the fishes as well. Permarin, that's actually something that is created from horse urine. And so more about that, and probably when I do a menopause video, we'll go over that in a little bit more detail. But that's been associated with increased risk of heart disease. Salt, of course, raises the blood pressure and stiffens the arteries. Even if it is the Himalayan pink salt, I'm sorry. For your salt connoisseurs, the black salt, the pink salt, all of that is a wonderful marketing campaign where people are trying to tell you there's essential minerals that are not really in any significant proportion in there. You're still getting a huge amount of sodium chloride, which is what the main salt crystal is made of. Even the sea salt, again, you're not getting any significant other micronutrients along with it. And then finally, the BPA in plastics is something that also raises the risk for heart disease as well. Again, there's all sorts of things in the plastics, especially the soft plastics, that can sometimes leach into the foods. For example, when people have an acidic food that's put into plastic, it may get a little bit more of these compounds into it. And then there's some mixed reviews on alcohol. Some of the studies on alcohol were showing that people that had a drink a day or something along those lines, like if it was red wine or something, that it might help prevent against heart disease. The trouble with that is that even a little bit amount of alcohol that most people would consider very light drinking or moderate drinking raises the risk of about 14 different kinds of cancer. And so you might help prevent something else, but you might also start a fire in a different area that you really don't want to start a fire in. The other thing is that alcohol raises the risk for irregular heartbeat. There's something called holiday heart, where people who basically drink on a weekend or something all of a sudden get heart palpitations. It changes the structure of the heart in a way that the heart loses its ability to really regulate itself and causes atrial fibrillation, all sorts of not good stuff. So highly recommend minimizing or avoiding alcohol as well, mostly because of the cancer risk, but it does damage the heart directly and the liver and the brain and all sorts of other reasons not to imbibe in it. Alrighty, so I think I've covered the meat of the things on Dr. Greger's review page, of the things that are related to helping to especially prevent heart disease, just highlighting a few of these foods and some of the foods that or chemicals that are especially troublesome. And of course, it goes without saying that the trans fats and the saturated fats and the animal products all are heart disease inducing, and so the more we avoid those things, the better off people are in general. And please do not fall for the myth that if you simply switch your red meat to white meat, that it's going to be protective at all against heart disease. It is not. Very strongly stated, but basically it is not protective. The chickens these days have about as much fat as the steaks, for many, many reasons. We'll probably do a video on chickens one of these days, kind of going over kind of what happens to these birds. Maybe it might have been true 100 years ago or something, when we had original chickens before they got bred into these birds that get fat very quickly. And by the way, they're given things like Prozac and all sorts of other things that make them fat fast, like antibiotics and stuff. Even your organic chicken is still a highly fatty food, and that is also going to clog your arteries as well. Ditto with the fish. The fishes are also very high in cholesterol, fatty kinds of things. And if you see the recommendations to choose lean cuts of meat, even them, you're basically throwing oil on the fire of the inflammation whenever you're having these products. The What the Health documentary goes over that in graphic detail if you're curious. Also wonderful resources in some of the other documentaries and the other references on my references list below there. The kind of misinformation that is out there currently and that people are thinking about, I've witnessed that personally, how it has killed at least one of my patients on there. They heard part of my talk on getting rid of statins or minimizing statins because of the other side effects that they can cause, and then using foods to help reduce the cholesterol, and didn't really hear the part about avoiding all these animal products, and thought that just switching from red meat to white meat was going to be enough, and rechecked the cholesterol after a few months. Again, they acted on their own and thought they were doing good. The cholesterol did not drop at all, because when you substitute one fatty food for another fatty food, it does not do very much for the cholesterol. You can't overcome the bad effects of a hamburger at lunch with a cup of oatmeal in the morning. It doesn't work that way. So anyway, I am very passionate about this because I know that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of thought that just a little bit of these things is going to be okay. And of course, everybody can choose to do what they want to do with the information presented, but if you want the best of what is out there for keeping those arteries open, keeping the arteries to the brain open, keeping the arteries to the whole body, including the heart, open, please do check out the whole food, plant-based diet. Very different from a vegan diet because vegan foods include a lot of junk foods. I was over at the Whole Foods this last weekend, got a chance to check out like the Beyond Burgers and other transition foods or meat substitutes that are out there. And yes, I will say that when I decided to try so that I would know how to explain this to you, the rest of you guys, the Beyond Meat burgers, basically they really do taste like a hamburger because they found a plant source that has the same heme, the same essential component as animal blood. So it's got that, I mean, it tastes a lot like an actual hamburger. And so for somebody that's transitioning from a meat-based diet to a plant-based diet, sometimes these things may be a little bit helpful for the transition phase or for those people that really don't want to follow the fully recommended prescription diet pattern. There's definitely a place for these in our society. But again, it's loaded with things like coconut oil and basically a lot of processed oils and processed things. And so for actually keeping the arteries open, not so good. Is it better than a beef burger? Absolutely. You're going to have a lot less colon cancer probably than if you're having the hamburgers, which are usually made with like 100 cows or something like that. Is kind of average for those kinds of things. Anywho, but I digress. So forgive me for the rambling off on this extra thing. But what you do to your body now can be very, very protective or very damaging over the years to come. So please check out the latest research, the latest information. Stay abreast of that with some of my favorite websites there listed below once I get a chance to list them in the comment section. And take care of yourselves. All right, till next time. Good night. Thanks for watching.